Microsoft can't afford to miss the next technology wave, and Bitcoin is that wave. Bitcoin
Says who? Bitcoin is that wave, like if it didn't have an agenda.
represents the greatest digital transformation of the 21st century. It represents digital capital. The global
And again, digital capital. What does it mean? Okay, first he calls it digital currency, then digital gold, then he calls it a digital asset. Now digital capital. It's not used as a capital nowhere. But if he says so,
global wealth is distributed across assets that provide utility and others that preserve capital.
yeah, okay, assets that provide the utility, I can see that. But that Bitcoin is a store of value, I still have to see that.
Capital. But risk is destroying trillions of dollars of that capital.
General taxes, capital gains. Okay, you'll have to pay capital gains on your Bitcoin too. All of this does not make any sense, in my opinion. Currency is not a currency. Recession. If there is a recession, people are gonna sell by the bulk. It doesn't matter whether it's a Bitcoin or whether it's the S&P 500. War and crime, yeah. If people are desperate, they're gonna sell everything. Politics, yeah, sure. Tenants, tenants generate cash flow. That's the problem with Bitcoin. It doesn't generate anything. Discrimination, culture shock, traffic, storage, energy. Yeah, the only thing that Bitcoin is a waste of energy. It's not even worth it to mine it. Most countries, it's not even worth it to mine it. Weather catastrophe, obsolescence, okay, and Bitcoin does not have obsolescence. What if the next guy comes out with the new revision of a cryptocurrency that's better than the Bitcoin, a better transaction, less fraud, faster transactions, better to mine. So yeah, it could be obsolete. Sooner or later it will be. Just like any other technology, it will be. It doesn't have any point here, Michael Saylor.
Every single year, and investors are turning to digital capital in the form of Bitcoin in order to avoid that risk. Digital capital is economically and technically superior to physical capital.
So now he's comparing a building, a physical building with a Bitcoin. Well, I don't know. If it is too good to be truth, it probably is. The building is physical, okay, and it's a hard asset, and it creates a cash flow, and eventually you can rent it out, you can do a lease option, you can sell it, you can do a seller financing, you can generate cash flow again. And the Bitcoin doesn't have any of this. Basically invisible, indestructible. Says who? Immortal. Says who? Because when the Bitcoin price is gonna plummet to 20, 10, 5 grand, and everyone is gonna sell by the bulk at a huge loss, it's not relevant anymore.
Technically superior to physical capital, and it represents a revolutionary advance in capital preservation.
But again, says who? This guy is not unbiased. This guy does have an agenda, and all of this PowerPoint, yeah, they look good, but says who? He doesn't have any evidence to back this up.
The asset class itself is growing from trillions to hundreds of trillions of dollars, and it is backed by digital power, along with
But the whole thing now it's backed by digital power. Even the US dollar, you can send money on the internet, you can send money from your phone app, all of it, it's got digital power. We didn't need the Bitcoin.
political and economic power. It makes sense for Microsoft to be powered by digital capital.
Says who?
Bitcoin's the best asset you can own.
But he says that the Bitcoin is unrelated, but in the reality, when there is a huge sell-off, people are gonna sell their stocks and their Bitcoin. Usually the Bitcoin goes up with the Nasdaq. I noticed there is a correlation there. Not always, but in most cases, the Nasdaq is green, the Bitcoin is green. So, I mean, if there was to be a huge recession and another pandemic, another war, people are gonna sell by the bulk.
Numbers speak for themselves. It makes a lot more sense to.
And this too, the thing is that this guy doesn't know that future results are not guaranteed, or rather past results are not guaranteed for future performances. And this is the number one law of investing. Everything is gonna end sooner or later. In the same way that you invested in the Nifty 50, you would have lost 70, 80, 90% of your capital. The same thing is gonna happen here. Just because Bitcoin has outperformed for the past 3-4 years, it doesn't mean anything. You know, there are a lot of penny stocks, a lot of value investment that went up 10, 15, 20 folds. That doesn't mean that the trend continues at all. He's making an assumption here that eventually he's gonna end up getting a lot of people losing a lot of money.
To buy Bitcoin than to buy your own stock back, or to hold Bitcoin rather than holding bonds. If you're going to outperform, you're going to need Bitcoin. And
yeah, but yet again, Microstrategy went up in price a lot, but a lot of that was what they're doing with their money. They're issuing convertible notes. They're diluting their shareholders. In the meantime, the price of the Bitcoin went up, and it's a spiral. It's a spiral up now, but very soon this trend is going to reverse and it's going to down spiral like you've never seen before.
And those bonds are undermining your options market and your equity liquidity. Luckily, you have an alternative. Public support for Bitcoin is surging, as is political support, as is support for the U.S. Bitcoin Strategic Reserve, as it.
Nothing is gonna happen there. It would be real stupid for any country to have a Bitcoin reserve. For what? It's just a non-productive asset. It's a waste of money there, while it would be better off investing in something which is more productive. And the mere fact that Larry Fink put Bitcoin on the BlackRock balance sheet, so what? It's a very small portion of the assets under management that BlackRock has, and it doesn't make any difference. Like putting $1 billion on the balance sheet worth with the Bitcoin for BlackRock is nothing. It's really negligible. Okay, and they can always sell at the right point, and they're gonna put the rug under your feet, and we're gonna lose a lot of money. The retail investor is gonna lose a lot of money. And when that news is gonna come out, the BlackRock has sold, the Bitcoin is gonna plummet, and then everyone is gonna sell by the bulk. Same thing happened when Elon Musk decided to put Bitcoin on the Tesla balance sheet, and he pretty much sold everything at a loss. He was accepting Bitcoin to pay for his cars, and that deal went away. Then he was taking Doge to buy apparel, and that deal went away. So, like you see, don't do anything just because someone is doing it, whether it's Larry Fink or anyone else, because again, they might have already sold their Bitcoin, as they you don't know, and when the news comes out, that's going to be a huge rug pull below your feet.
This is Wall Street support. And the President of the United States says,
never sell your Bitcoin.
Well, look at that facial expression. It really seems like he means it. He only said that to get them votes. He only spoke at that conference to get all the Bitcoin people votes. 100%. If you don't know that, you don't know anything about Donald Trump. Because I like the guy and I voted for the guy, but the thing is that the people who don't care about Bitcoin and they were Republican, they still vote for Donald Trump. The people that were on the fence and they didn't know what to do and they were Bitcoin people, they voted for him after his speech. It was just basically to get them votes. So transparent.
That's why we're entering year one of the crypto renaissance. And you have a choice to make. Cling to the past or embrace the future. Divest billions of dollars and slow your growth rate. Invest billions of dollars and accelerate your growth rate. You've surrendered hundreds of billions of dollars of capital over the past 5 years, and you've just amplified the risks that your own shareholders face. If you want to escape that vicious cycle, you're going to need an asset.
Yeah, so they're not going to do any of that. They're going to invest their money in an empty asset that doesn't generate anything. It's worth what it's worth only because people are willing to pay that amount. But you cannot win with the Bitcoin. It doesn't matter your entry point. You might be in the red for 2, 3, 4 years, and in order to break even with your initial investment, it's just a Russian roulette. Like everything else, pretty much you be trading Bitcoin on technicals because there are no fundamentals. So, and when you make all your choices based on technical, it's not easy to pick the top and then the re-entry point at the bottom. It's not easy at all. Like I was saying, if the price of real estate was to plummet, this is going to be very appealing to a real estate investor because they can buy real estate at a cheap distressed price and then rent it out. Okay, and the cap rate goes up, so you are going to see real estate investors coming in case of a huge house price drop. The same thing I can say about stocks. Let's say that there is a good company, individual stock that pays dividend, and that stock price goes down a lot. So that means that the dividend yield goes up a lot, and that's going to be very appealing at dividend stock investors. But look, the thing is that the Bitcoin doesn't generate any yield. There is no bottom, and when people start selling by the bulk, the Bitcoin doesn't have a floor. It can be, what's the next stop? 60,000, 50,000, 20,000, 5,000. It can be like a free fall, and there is not going to be any final user because it doesn't have any utility. The only people are the idiots that are trying to go back into a 50, a 30, a 20, a 10 grand, and eventually they're going to sell everything at a huge loss when it hits a grand again.
Without counterparty risk. What if you could buy a $100 billion company growing faster than Microsoft for 1 times revenue? What if you could keep...
But it's a fairy tale. I mean, he's trying to sell Microsoft to a fairy tale. Like if people at Microsoft were dumb. They're not. and pretty much he's gonna make a fool of himself.
Doing it every single year. It's time for Microsoft to evaluate its Bitcoin strategic options. We've created an open source model. You can plug in your own assumptions. You can convert your cash flows and your dividends and your buybacks and your debt into Bitcoin.
Yeah, he's saying, people, convert your real money, the one that you need to buy feed, the one that you need to pay your rent, the one that you need to pay your house mortgage, to pay your federal taxes. Surrender that money to buy a joke, okay, that you cannot pay. You cannot pay your rent with Bitcoin, you cannot pay your federal taxes with Bitcoin. And even if you do have Bitcoin, then when April 15 comes, you still have to convert it back into US dollars, and you're gonna have to pay capital gains on it. So you bought Bitcoin with your hard-earned US dollars that I'm assuming you already paid taxes on it, and then you buy Bitcoin, you have to convert it back into US dollars or euros. You gotta pay capital gain taxes on it. So pretty much is a double taxation deal. So if you're willing to pay twice your taxes, like if it wasn't enough already, well then buy Bitcoin.
If you do that, you'll add hundreds of dollars to the stock price. You can create trillions of dollars of enterprise value. You can strip away risk from your shareholders. And you can...
you call that stripping away risk? An asset that it went from 60,000 to 20,000 to 70,000 to 95,000, and you call that stripping the risk? I think you're going to introduce a lot of risk there.
Can prosper on the Bitcoin standard. So do the right thing for the world and adopt Bitcoin.
Oh, says who? The most unbiased guy on the internet.